At his mother's birthday dinner, the whole table laughed when her brother sneered, "She'll wait tables forever." But minutes later, a world-renowned Michelin chef walked past him and shook her hand. In that moment, the room realized nothing about her life was what they thought. What would you do if the person everyone underestimated turned out to own the place? Share your thoughts below. When my brother called me the queen of tips in front of everyone, I just smiled. Tonight, the stage is mine. The air in Hearth and Sea smelled of warm rosemary bread and briny salt jazz curling from the corner trio. Crystal glasses chimed under careful hands. Outside, November chilled the windows. Inside, 6:30 felt like a curtain rise. My phone buzzed. "Dress appropriately." "It's Mom." Ethan's tone hummed between the lines. I let it fade. Chloe emerged from the service corridor with a crisp black and white uniform tie knotted sharp. "You're really doing this?" she murmured. "Set the table," I said, sliding into the uniform. The keycard in my pocket owner, printed in white, sat like a secret against my palm. At the host stand, I was greeted with the warmth reserved for staff. The maitre d' gestured me inside. Velvet chairs brushed brass chandeliers, spilling light across linen. I walked past diners to the round table for 12. Mom, coral silk and pearls, beamed when she saw me. "You made it." Her hand was warm, her smile genuine. Around her, relatives settled with the practiced ease of people used to being served. Ethan, immaculate in navy, turned from a cousin. His eyes found my uniform. His mouth curved, not quite surprise. "I wasn't sure you could get the night off," he said lightly for the table's amusement. Chloe passed with a basket of rosemary rolls, steam ghosting between us. "You're on the books as shadowing," she whispered. "I had a good teacher," I murmured back. Service moved in a quiet rhythm, plates angled just so wine poured with a twist of the wrist. Ethan's next text buzzed. "Don't embarrass Mom." I ignored it, delivering a glass to an aunt who thanked me without looking up. The table's chatter orbited Ethan. He told a story from Manhattan, modest in shape but polished for applause. My part was to listen. Place settings let the minutes turn. The keycard warmed in my pocket, every degree a reminder of leases signed. Burns endured menus, perfected at 2 a.m. Chloe passed with Chablis, whispering, "Everything you want is already in the room." Ethan watched me elbow on his chair, king in his court. "Mom told me you might come," he said, smiling. "I told her I'd make sure you felt included." Plates landed before him. He turned to me fully, voice pitched for the nearby tables. 29 and still bussing tables. "You'll die behind the counter," he says loud enough for the next table to hear. Laughter erupts. I curl my fingers around the keycard in my pocket and simply reply, "Could be." Their laughter rang like nails into the coffin they thought I was already in. Golden light draped over white tablecloths, soft enough to flatter, sharp enough to catch on crystal stems and the rim of silver cutlery. The hum of quiet conversations wrapped the dining room like silk, broken only by the gentle clink of plates and the low shuffle of the corner jazz trio. From above, the discreet black dome of the security camera glinted, a silent witness that no one seemed to notice except me. I wondered if it would capture the way my brother's mouth twisted when he was about to wound me. I slid a plate of scallop crudo in front of my mother, the citrus pearls trembling under the warm glow. She beamed at me, not with pride, but the polite gratitude one offers any server. Before she could say anything, Ethan's voice rose just enough to thread through the music. "You all remember when Olivia called me at 2 a.m. crying about rent?" The table leaned in, scent of champagne and seared duck swirling with curiosity. She thought she'd be homeless. I wired her $200 to keep her off the street. He turned his smile on me, razor hidden in velvet. And now here she is, still on her feet. Serving. The chuckle started small, then swelled, drawing in uncles, cousins, even the aunts who pretended not to enjoy it. I kept my face neutral, letting the laughter pass over me. My mother dabbed at her lips, oblivious, while Ethan's new girlfriend shifted in her chair. Her eyes, pale and sharp, flicked toward me with an unease she tried to disguise by sipping her wine. Ethan caught the glance and pressed harder. "Of course she's nothing like Lydia. You remember Lydia, my ex, who opened that boutique in Soho? First month, she cleared 50 grand. Some people just find their lane. His gaze pinned me a challenge to flinch. Instead, I reached for the next plate. My mind drifted to another kitchen years ago, rented by the hour with an oven that barely held temperature. I'd stood there in the chill of late winter, stirring oyster cream soup until the steam scalded my hand. I'd wrapped it in gauze and kept stirring. Every cent I had went into that kitchen, not to rent. That was why I'd called him for money. Not because I was failing, but because I was building something no one could yet see. Another round of laughter rolled down the table, heavier this time, like a tide pulling me under. I felt the weight of each chuckle, the way it stuck to the air made it harder to breathe. But beneath the noise, Chloe's voice slipped in like a thread. "He's here." I set down the last plate and turned toward the entrance. The maitre d' was already moving his practiced elegance, parting the narrow walkway between tables. He stopped, and the room seemed to notice him just in time to notice who stepped in behind him. A tall man in a white chef's coat, the crisp fabric marked by 3 gold-stitched stars on the cuff, walked in with the easy stride of someone used to command. Conversations began to taper the music, holding its note a moment too long. He scanned the room once, and my pulse steadied. If laughter was their language, then silence was about to be mine. At 8:05, the maitre d' stepped to the entrance, and the dining room's hum softened. Conversations faltered, the music stretched a note. I stood near the side station tray, balanced, watching the doorway. Ethan noticed too, straightening his jacket, wearing that courtroom confidence he used like armor. His girlfriend leaned toward him, sensing something was about to unfold. My family's faces turned expectant. The maitre d' stepped aside, revealing a man in a crisp white chef's coat, Chef Laurent Dumas. He carried himself with quiet authority, the kind that didn't need announcement. Heads turned in a slow wave. Ethan's voice rang out, practiced and loud enough for nearby tables. "Laurent, over here." He gestured toward the empty space beside him, already smiling for the moment he expected. Laurent walked past him without a glance. He stopped in front of me, eyes warm with recognition, extending his hand. "Bonjour, Madame Grant. Always an honor to see the owner in her house." The words settled over the table like a bell. The laughter from earlier evaporated. Ethan's smile held, but the edges froze. His girlfriend's grip on her napkin tightened. My mother's hand paused halfway to her pearls. I took Laurent's hand. The keycard in my pocket shifted, catching the chandelier light for a moment. Owner, visible in white letters. A cousin's eyes widened. "Chef," I said evenly. Around us, diners listened without trying to look like they were listening. Laurent smiled. "Your team has executed beautifully tonight. The scallop excellent." His tone made it sound like fact, not flattery. Ethan tried to recover. "Olivia's been helping," he said, his voice too quick. "Helping is fine," Laurent replied. "But ownership is finer." Something in Ethan's expression cracked. The table's focus tilted toward me, subtle but irreversible. Even those who had laughed earlier seemed unsure of their footing now. I released Laurent's hand. "We're glad you're here," I said. "The city deserves you," he replied before turning to the maitre d' to request a word with the pastry chef later. The moment lingered silence, thick but calm. This was no longer Ethan's stage. The balance had shifted without force, just truth. I looked at him, let the pause speak, then smiled. "Welcome to my home." They thought the main course was Wagyu beef. No, it was me. The room still carried the soft hum of silverware and muted conversation, but at our table, the air was taut. I could feel the weight of eyes shifting toward me, curious, cautious. The keycard in my pocket pressed against my thigh, a steady reminder that every moment tonight was captured, the overhead camera's faint red light still blinking in the corner. Ethan leaned back, trying to reclaim control with that trademark smirk. "She's just a shift lead." He said the words dipped in mockery, but cloaked for the untrained ear. His laugh was lighter than before, the kind people use when they're trying to convince themselves more than anyone else. Laurent, standing beside me with the ease of someone who had nothing to prove, gave a small, knowing chuckle. "Non, monsieur," he said, his French accent curling through the air like smoke from a fine cigar. "She owns hearth and sea. and the other 6 restaurants of Grant Hospitality Group. His tone was not boastful, merely factual, which made it all the more devastating. A collective intake of breath swept the table. Chloe, as if she'd been waiting for her cue, stepped forward with a glossy copy of Seattle Epicure. She placed it before Ethan, the cover catching the warm light, my portrait confident and sharp under the headline, "The Young Mogul Behind Seattle's Culinary Empire." A cousin leaned toward another, whispering too loudly to be discreet. "The whole city knows. Except us." The words pricked the air like pins. Margaret's voice was tentative, her smile trembling at the edges. "Olivia, why hide this?" Her eyes were searching as if she was trying to reconcile the woman before her with the image she'd carried for years. I kept my tone, even my gaze, steady. "To see if love needs a net worth," I said. The statement landed quietly, but carried the weight of a gavel strike. Ethan's jaw flexed. He shifted in his seat, his phone buzzing once in his palm. I caught the faint reflection of a text on the screen. "If this spreads, contesting the will gets harder." The color drained subtly from his face, but he masked it with a forced smile. The silence between us thickened, stretching taut. Laurent remained by my side, a silent pillar. Margaret's hands folded in her lap, eyes darting between us. The magazine lay open, its pages gleaming under the table's candlelight. Each photo, another nail in the coffin Ethan had been hammering for years, except now it was his own. Ethan cleared his throat fingers, tightening around his phone. "Well, congratulations. Sis." The words came out smooth, but the steel in his grip told the truth. I used to serve tables to survive. Tonight, I'm serving to finish a war. The private dining room held 12 chairs and the kind of quiet that makes crystal seem louder. Linen lay sharp as folded snow. Candlelight lifted gold from the rims of the stemware. The sommelier moved like a metronome, reappearing exactly when he was meant to, never sooner. Laurent stood beside the sideboard sleeves, rolled once presents, measured the conductor, no one dared interrupt. I took my place at the head, not seated, not tonight, and let the room understand that the service would answer to me. For the table, I said the 12-course tasting with pairings. I tilted my chin toward Chloe. "Charge it to Ethan's account." The sommelier inclined his head. In the small pause that followed, Ethan's phone vibrated with the precise, impersonal tone of a banking alert. His thumb spread over the screen. I watched the fight to keep his face smooth. Across the table, Margaret's posture wavered, then stabilized, hands folding as if to keep from reaching for either of us. "Pre-authorization for 3,000. The sommelier murmured, purely procedural, not a challenge. Ethan slipped the device below the tablecloth shoulders, tight. "Of course," he said. "Anything for family." The smile he assembled was a structure under stress. Chloe took her place at the far end, phone angled downward, eyes trained on reflections rather than faces. The security camera would catch the room. Chloe would catch the truth. The first wine glowed pale in the glass-green apple and chalk on the nose, a river-stone coolness that promised restraint. Laurent lifted the silver lid from the opening dish, and steam rose with the faintest note of cognac. "Lobster bisque," he said, accent, placing silken weight on the last word. "With cognac cream." I stepped in, not to steal the moment, but to score it. The stock is built from roasted shells, tomato paste, caramelized until it remembers sweetness, mirepoix that never sees color, only patience. We reduce in stages so the ocean doesn't shout, it speaks. I let my gaze move deliberately to Ethan. The cognac is folded in off heat so the perfume stays. The sommelier poured the pairing something slate-boned and clean enough to slice through richness. He named the vineyard, the elevation, the limestone that taught the vines discipline. Glasses met lips. Silence didn't fall. It leaned. Ethan's phone pulsed again beneath his hand. He read, jaw flexing. His fingers moved, and I could imagine the words without seeing them. A second later, his screen lit up on the linen as he held it too far from his body. "We need to move now. Change the trust terms." He yanked the phone back like it burned. I set a spoon beside his bowl with a softness that felt like mockery, because I didn't soften the gaze that came with it. "You always liked decisive action," I said, as if we were alone. Laurent proceeded with the cadence of ceremony, a jeweled salad of shaved fennel and blood orange microherbs arranged with surgeon care. Then a precise square of halibut skin crackled to a glass perched on a bed of leek fondue. The room learned to listen with its palate. Compliments walked around the table in whispers. Between courses, the sommelier's voice stitched time a Sancerre cut from flint, a Burgundian white with a line of acid like a spine. Later, a Pinot that tasted like forest and restraint. He never said more than he needed. Good pairings are an argument won without raising your voice. Ethan split his attention between plates and the glowing rectangle beneath his napkin. I watched the rhythm bite glance type, swallow nod type. He told himself the legal work was more important than the food. He forgot that the food was the work. Course 5 arrived with ceremony-seared duck breast with cherry gastrique, the fat rendered to a lacquered edge, slices fanned in a pattern that suggested generosity without waste. The cherries are reduced with a touch of star anise, I said, so the sweetness listens to the spice. I left the fork at the perfect angle and let the pairing a Pinot with a red fruit whisper do its job. Chloe adjusted her position, capturing the way Ethan's hand trembled when he reached for his glass. He steadied it by force, then failed to keep the tremor from traveling up his wrist. The camera in the ceiling blinked its obedient light. He tried for bright conversation. In New York, they'd kill for a room like this, he said to no one and everyone. Olivia's been learning fast. He aimed the last word at Laurent, hoping for an ally. Laurent's reply was mild and incontrovertible. Learning is how one becomes an owner, monsieur. And she is already that. Midway through the meal, I let the silence gather. Then I stood fully, not as a server, not as a supplicant. What you've paid tonight. Not even a week's revenue for me. It wasn't a shout. It was a line placed with the precision of a blade on a cutting board. The room received it and knew it would bruise. Ethan blinked. Color moved under his skin and then drained away. His girlfriend, quiet observant, set down her fork with a care that read like allegiance choosing a new direction. Margaret's inhale was audible. She bit it back into decorum. Laurent nodded once as if to a colleague who'd executed the difficult step. The next course landed handmade pasta cut so thin it trembled, glossed with brown butter and sage crowned with shaved truffle that perfumed the table. The sommelier's pour shifted to Old World red with a cedar edge. The conversation, such as it was, stepped carefully around the new fact in the room. Ethan typed again, knuckles whitening. He angled the phone, forgetting the reflections in glass and polished silver. Chloe captured the mirrored words with the steady inevitability of gravity draft amendment. Move assets to revocable. Keep her out. He tucked the device away as if secrecy could be retroactive. I leaned toward Laurent, low voice for him and anyone who wished to overhear. The pastry wants 3 more degrees on the oven for the soufflé. He smiled. We will give it 4. Ambition requires a margin. When the dark chocolate soufflé arrived, risen without apology, dusted with sugar so fine it vanished as you breathed on it, the room actually sighed. Raspberry coulis drew a small red comet on each plate. A spoon cracked the crust and released heat like a kept promise. The pairing was a late harvest wine that smelled of apricot and patience. Ethan reached for his phone again, hands no longer entirely under his command. The sommelier set a glass in front of him at the precise moment his finger slipped an old ballet misstepped by a dancer who had believed himself immune to gravity. The device bumped the stemware, skidded, and slid forward to the exact center of the table screen, bright. Chloe's camera caught the tremor as his hand hovered, then seized. The room noticed not the clatter. There was none but the pause, the way motion stalled around a fulcrum. On the screen, bold blue letters crowned a white field already crowded with comments. Tags, little red hearts multiplying like a blush you couldn't stop. The headline took 1 second to read and promised 1,000 more. His phone slipped screen up, breaking news. Madame Owner hits 2.3 MR views in under an hour. There are 2 kinds of people in this family, those who serve, and those who are served. I choose both because I can. By morning, the line is a headline. The clip loops everywhere, my uniform, the keycards glint, Laurent's greeting. Ethan's face stunned into stillness. Commentators slow the footage, freeze the handshake, count the beats it takes for the room to turn. At 8:30 a.m., high above the sound, Ethan watches himself lose the moment in his own glass walls. His lawyer stands at the island tablet, open voice, clean and exact. With this public image, claiming undue influence or questioning testamentary intent will backfire. No drama, only consequences. Any attempt to modify the trust now reads retaliatory. We wait. We behave. Ethan nods but doesn't absorb it. The tablet closes with a soft click that might as well be a gavel. By 11:00 a.m., the firm's conference room is all marble confidence and framed victories. Associates glance up, then away. On a muted screen, the clip replays Laurent's hand. My smile, Ethan, frozen between two stories of himself. The lawyer repeats the warning slower. Ethan's jaw works like a muscle under load. Just before noon, my phone lights with a text that reads like a memo. Apologies for last night. Congratulations. I leave it unread. The sun stripes my office at GHG. Below Seattle keeps moving, which is exactly how success should feel. Your private war ends and the city keeps its appointments. On my desk waits the international expansion contract, flagged and clean. I sign. The ink dries into certainty. Across from me, Chloe scrolls investor emails, trying and failing to sound neutral. Tokyo wants to meet. Vancouver too. São Paulo loves the seafood angle. She glances up. Everyone's quoting your line. Which one? Choosing both. She grins. It travels. Laurent steps in with the quiet of a man who doesn't need to knock anymore. He sets down a small box that smells like dark chocolate and pride. For the milestone, he says, eyes flicking to the countersigned pages. You did not wait for permission. Neither did you. The smile we share is for work, not luck. The afternoon drifts on in small, decisive clicks. PR drafts, talking points I won't use. HR asks for language to steady staff when the questions come. I give them the truth, it was a dinner service, and then gravity changed. Chloe trims the public moments into a clean arc, overlays the headline the internet already knows. Near evening, the interview airs. The lights feel like a kitchen morning, not an interrogation. I talk about craft and patience, about burning your hand on a night when a soup finally sings. When the host asks if any of this is revenge, I don't waste the line. Success isn't for revenge, but revenge has never tasted so sweet. It lands, and you can hear it echo in messages and numbers in the peculiar hush of a win arriving on time. A florist sends peonies without a note. A competitor sends a bottle in deliberate silence. My mother texts a photograph of her pearls on the dresser and writes dinner. Soon I owe you listening. I breathe long and even and let the day be enough. The office thins to quiet. Seattle lights itself one window at a time. Laurent lifts a hand and leaves me with Chloe and the view. She refreshes the dashboard. The curve climbs like a tide coming home. I close the contract folder, feel the room settle into its new shape, and turn toward the laptop just as the notification slides into the corner. Email ping subject line proposal from Paris investor. They had entered the night certain of their victory, but by morning the balance had shifted beyond repair. What began as quiet endurance ended as a public reckoning, proving that even the most polished lies crumble under the weight of truth. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. In the end, the one who once served the table now commanded the room, a reminder that no wall of deceit can stand forever against the tide of justice.